Welcome into the Sources Say podcast, your go-to Kentucky basketball podcast on the KSR Podcast Network, presented by Club Blue. Club Blue is the official collective partner of the University of Kentucky. I am your host, Jack Pilgrim of Kentucky Sports Radio. Very excited to be joined once again by Shawn Smith. Shawn, how are you, buddy? How are you feeling? Life good?
Little under the weather.
I think I see. Do you have splinters in your hair?
Oh God!
Am I saying that right?
So
why do you have splinters in your hair?
So you're going to make me tell what happened as we went off the air the other night?
It's not my story to tell you. It's your embarrassment, not mine.
So I had to maneuver some stuff around the other night to record because I've got two Wi-Fi networks in this building. For some reason, one wasn't wanting to connect. One was great right by my front door. So I'm sitting in front of my front door. Usually my charger is plugged in on the left side of me, so I exit to the right. Well, I didn't pay attention. Charger's on the right. I go to walk, and it sends me through my table. Like, split the table in half. And, I mean, if you'd walked in here, it looked like I jumped off like my furniture through my table.
It's like that old, you're just celebrating Chris Farley's skit for SNL 50, where Chris Farley just jumps through the table and there's just wood shrapnel everywhere as he's Matt Foley. Like you're just in the spirit. Look at that. It's just, you're the spirit of Saturday Night Live here on Sources Say. That is hilarious. I mean, I don't think you could find smaller splinters. Just, there will be wood chips for like decades in that. Whoever lives in that place after you, they will find wood shrapnel because of you in decades. Years.
Glad I didn't land on one of these bad boys. They're all over the place too. So,
from the table?
Yes, man, I'm telling you, the table used to be a full size table and now it's a half. Like, that ain't a half. I think I got a quarter of the table. And if I move anything, like the whole thing could go, like laptop, light, microphone, all of it. Barely got enough room for my peppermint sitting here beside me, which I'm a little under the weather too. But hey, Kentucky got a win.
It's like you're under the table.
Yeah, it's a good one. Like it literally.
That was actually a really terrible one. I apologize. That was a bad joke.
It looked like something you'd see at WrestleMania, like a tables, ladders, and chairs match, and I lost because that was a tables match and I went through it.
Well, I apologize. I know that must not be the best, but you know who else went through it? The Vanderbilt Commodores, as they took a nice good old fashioned butt whooping inside Rupp Arena, 82-61. Kentucky defeats the Commodores in what we described as a must-win. I know that phrase is stupid, and I know it's annoying because everybody says every game is a must-win. But given the schedule, given what was in front of us, given what's on the line with SEC tournament seeding, and it still may not have even mattered because we're still got some ground to make up to avoid a Wednesday start. But this was one that if Kentucky didn't want to get automatically sent to the gulag of Wednesday in Nashville and then just kind of let fate play out with, how the rest of the season unfolded with the injuries and all that stuff, this was one you just had to take care of business. It didn't matter by how many, didn't have to be super pretty, didn't matter if it was by 100 or 1 point. Kentucky just had to have more than Vanderbilt at the final buzzer, and very fortunately, they had 21 more than Vanderbilt at the final buzzer. Shawn, really unbelievable defensive effort there in the second half. That was probably the biggest takeaway. Obviously, Otega Oweh plays, we kind of take his 20-point efforts for granted because he just kind of wakes up with, double figures. But the coming out party for Collin Chandler, welcome to the show, kid. We're very proud of you. And then just the dominance of Amari Williams. Where do you even want to start with this? Because there were so many positive takeaways and such a feel-good victory for the Cats.
I think just overall seeing the growth that they were able to have from Saturday to Wednesday, and you're playing a team that beat you when you had those guys that are out, and they come into your building, and as you said, the SEC standings, Jack, had Kentucky lost and Vandy won. They've obviously won both regular season meetings at that point, and you're kind of in the same area of seeding. You're talking about not even being a 9. You're talking about maybe a 10-11 given what happens down the stretch run here. But I think when, we talked about it, I believe it was after the win against Tennessee. When you're going to shoot 58, 40, and 100 from those three areas of the floor for the field, 3-point line and free throw line, I mean, let's talk about it. 13 of 13 at the free throw line. Like when you do that and then you play with an improved defensive presence, especially in the second half, but over the last 3 or 4 games, things are starting to trend in your favor. And it was good to see them flush out how they lost just 3 days ago, right? Like just get that out of the system, get back in with the same core of guys, not only win a game, but I think probably look the best that you have in a while in that second half.
Before we continue, can I just give a shout out? Pat Adams. You didn't make an ass of yourself on the national stage, buddy. I'm proud of you. Like, it was a good game. We spoke it into existence. I saw him. He was, the mirrors were surrounding him. He really was, I think getting into all right, the moment, this is my moment. It's time for me to shine. I know a lot of haters in this world are expecting my absolute worst today, but you know what? I'm going to throw him a little curveball. I'm going to give him the best Pat Adams experience they've ever had where we didn't notice that Pat Adams was out there. So, Pat, you may be one of the worst in the game, but I am so proud of you for not showing your true colors yesterday. You were fantastic. Good job, bud. Just with how shorthanded Kentucky was and just kind of the circumstances surrounding, obviously seeing Andrew Carr get back to full strength is, massive growth. But my favorite part of the win was just seeing how the guys that needed to step up at some point this season, even without Trent Noah making shots, the way he stepped up defensively. Collin Chandler, we've seen many breakthroughs with him, especially on the defensive side. He had that moment against Chaz Lanier down in Knoxville. We were like, oh, all right, could he be the defensive stopper when this team really hit rock bottom down in Oxford. They fall to number 112 in defensive efficiency, where you're just like, okay, this team is going to be historically bad defensively. Can they be historically good offensively to make up for it? And they weren't really doing that. They were fine, if not pretty good. But just when you have that much ground to make up, like, where do we go? And it's very clear that Collin Chandler can be that guy as a nice little spark plug off the bench. But for him to step up the way he did, getting 7 points, 2 of 5 shooting, but also, 6 rebounds. Like he was kind of shocked at his rebounding production. That clearly jumped off the film. Had 2 assists, career high, two steals as well in 15 minutes. He was tremendous. That was a kid that kind of admitted after the game that he hit rock bottom. Didn't realize, he said, I thought that I was mentally tough when I got here. I mean, the kid's been 2-year mission, gave his entire life away for his faith, which is an awesome, admirable thing. But that's a lot of sacrifice from a basketball perspective. And he thought he had overcome a lot of that. Thought he was in a good, headspace. Thought he was good, physically there at some point, and just really has not been able to break through at all this season. So for him to kind of have that moment when Kentucky needed it most, with Lamont out, with Jackson out, with Kerr out, with Andrew almost at 100%, but still trying to find his footing too. There was no more important time than right now for Collin Chandler to have the Collin Chandler game that we saw last night.
Yeah, I thought it was perfectly timed. I thought it was great for him and for Kentucky as well, because now if you're Mark Pope, you can look at each individual that's on your roster, scholarship player-wise, and say, they have contributed to winning at some point in the stretch of play. That gives you a ton of confidence that when you're back to full strength, Jack, that you've got options now that a month ago we were talking about 8 guys, maybe 9, and now back to full strength. If you can get there, now you're adding in the freshmen that we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks. I think that's probably been the biggest storyline in this stretch, is just the freshmen playing impactful minutes. And last night it was Collin Chandler's time. And look, you don't have to be excellent, right? You don't have to go in and make all your shots. You don't have to go in and score 15, 20 points. You've got guys that are doing that. Just be a star in your role. And last night it was on the glass. It was playing with energy. He scored 7 points. He grabbed 6 rebounds, 2 assists. Just be impactful in the minutes that you play. Trent didn't score last night. Still gave an impact, was still able to play 16 minutes. He rebounds the basketball while he's in there. Travis is making shots and doing some things. I tweeted last night that, the team that beat Duke when they had everybody available, and then they beat Gonzaga and Florida when guys are when they're at basically full what we consider full strength. That was a really good version of Kentucky, but I don't think it's the best version of Kentucky because none of these freshmen were making impactful plays. So if you get back to full strength, and I consider full strength this year Lamont and Jackson. Like we've kind of got to a point here with Kerr where we've kind of factored him not into this in the closing stretch. So full strength for me is getting those two back. Jacqueline, if they get those two back and these freshmen are still able to contribute, and you've got Amari playing the way that he is, and these other pieces, Almanor making shots, he's a better version now than he was when Kentucky was winning those games early in the year. Like we've not seen the best version of Kentucky yet. And it's because Collin Chandler, Travis Perry, Trent Noah all making impacts, but Collin was the last one that you really needed to see have those moments, and I think it was a big thing. We'll see where the minutes go here for the freshmen if they do get back to full strength. But knowing that you can look at Collin Chandler and put him in and him be key for you in an SEC game when you need it, it's a big deal for this team.
First player off the bench like that. Mark Pope caught a lot of flack when there's a moment of panic, Sean, when you have your second and third leading scorers go down with injury. Kirk Kriisa, your backup point guard, has been out since December 7th. And you kind of get to that point of panic of, well, let's just feed the guys that we know can be successful. And we know Ortega is going to produce, so just feed him. We know Amari Williams is going to produce, so just feed him. Kobe Brea, he has to take 10 threes a game for Kentucky to win basketball games. Just cut the bench off entirely. We got to cut this rotation down to 6 or 7 and just figure it out with the guys we got. In that moment, when there was kind of that panic among the fan base, Mark Pope took that information and said, I understand why you may feel that Amari Williams needs to play 35 minutes a game and why, we got to just stretch these guys as much as possible without stretching the rotation as far as possible. But I disagree with you. And that was the first time that we'd kind of heard stubborn Mark Pope come out where he was like, I know why you think this way, but just I'm going to trust the process because I have seen these guys perform behind the scenes and I know their breakthrough is coming. And at the time when we hadn't seen Collin Chandler play this way, when we hadn't seen a true sustained breakout for a Trent Noah and Travis Perry kind of drowning at certain points of the year, it's easy for us to go, wow, you're an idiot. Like, I can't believe you're making this, why aren't you feeding Amari? Why are you not going toward the guys that you can trust? And in that moment for him to kind of make that, like, I'm going to make a gutsy call one way or the other. And he said his exact words we'll see if it's a winning strategy or not. And it was so easy at the time to go, sounds like a losing strategy to me, idiot. But when you take that and see how the branches have kind of bloomed. And I love the analogy that he gave last night, talking about a bamboo tree where he's like, we have seen Collin Chandler just establish these deep, wide, strong roots throughout the course of the season where, yes, he had no on-court production whatsoever up to this point, but we've seen the growth behind the scenes where we knew he was about to get that, sprout up. The development was going to finally pay off into on-court production. He was like, bamboo trees can, Guinness World Record of growing a yard in a day. That's what we see with Collin Chandler. And we've seen Trent Noah do that. We've seen that with Travis Perry. So for him to just kind of trust that process and trust his guys, it wasn't even so much in the short term for the payoff. It's the fact that we can now go into this Alabama game and not go, how in the hell are we going to go win that game? How do you go down to Alabama? Well, Collin Chandler just needs to play the way he did in this one. Trent Noah needs to play the way that he did against, both Tennessee matchups. Travis Perry needs to continue to make shots. You can start piecing together how you win these games, no matter what the injury situation looks like. And I think Pope deserves a ton of credit for kind of pushing off the criticism and trusting his gut.
I think a lot of it too is just, being impactful with your minutes, right? Like you don't have to score. You just have to be impactful in some area, whether it's defend, rebound, play with energy, like whatever the role is for you that night. Like I think that he's leaned Travis Perry in recent weeks because I still feel like success for this team is tied to making 3-point shots. And when you don't have, Jackson and then Lamont's down, you probably want to go with the guy that is the best 3-point shooter of the group, right? And then, Trent has made some shots. Well, Collin gets in, hits one early last night. Trent didn't, but you still got 3 made threes from that trio of freshmen. So you're still getting some balance. I feel like with the freshmen, though, you need at least one of them to play well, I think, to give you a shot right now. 2 of them put you in a position, I think, to win almost every single night that you play, because you know what you're getting from Ortega. You know what you're getting from Amari. I think Carr getting back in the starting lineup, I feel like, is a good step in the right direction for where Mark Pope wants this thing to go in the closing weeks. But it's not like you lost anything from Almanor. He goes in and still has a really good night. So that was, to me, that was the encouraging thing to see, is a guy slides out, you slide somebody back in that's been kind of your staple there for the entire year, and there was no regression from Almanor. Like, same role. That's why he fits so perfectly with this team, is it don't matter. It's just the puzzle piece that fits regardless of where you put it. In the middle, on the corners, it don't matter. He knows what his role is, but Jack, Chandler getting in and doing what he did last night. Mark Pope went to bed last night thinking, man, Trent Noah's had his moments against Tennessee. Travis Perry was our starting point guard on the road at Texas. He's made big shots for us in games. Collin Chandler is now giving us impactful minutes. We've seen Brandon Garrison have his moments this year. Almanor's consistent. You get healthy, man. You're starting to now a roster that you had 8 or 9 you were confident in. Now you're talking 11 to 12 that you're confident in, and that's a really big development, I think, that was not going to happen if you didn't have injuries. Like Kentucky, the best version of Kentucky is still to come if they get healthy. And that's a good thing, because we've seen them beat Duke, beat Gonzaga, beat Florida, who's a 1 seed and playing like one of the best teams in college basketball right now. We've seen them beat Tennessee. We've not seen the version of Kentucky with Lamont and Jackson, with these freshmen making impactful plays, the way Almanor's playing too. That's a big deal to me. Like, that gives me hope and confidence that if you just get in that tournament and you're healthy, Jack, you can look at number 9, 10, or 11, and foul trouble doesn't crush you now. I'm starting to see that this team can really go on a run, especially if it keeps defending at the clip that it is. That's the turning point. Now, is it because of who they've played recently? But none of these teams are making threes against you. Like, this is a thing here that's kind of trending in a positive direction for Kentucky, and you're still scoring the ball.
I think this is the sweet spot for Pope, where what we saw on Wednesday with 9 players between 15 minutes played and 31 minutes played, no more, no less. What does that look like, Shawn? Assuming a lot of if and when conversation with Pope, but there's kind of been a conversation on KS Board. By the way, if you haven't subscribed, what are you doing at this point? Make sure you're subscribed to KSR Plus. But there's kind of a conversation on KS Board that he might have a little bit of Rick Pitino in him, of like, every injury is the worst injury to, he's got his arm blown off in a, crossfire, and Jackson Robinson has like a slight sprain or something, something like that. You might have to just amputate Lamont Butler's shoulder, like his whole arm has to come off. Unfortunately, it's terrible, and he plays two days later. Like, that's just, it kind of has the sensationalism of Rick Pitino, where every injury is the worst of all time. So I do kind of wonder, when people ask, like, when's Jackson Robinson coming back? We haven't really experienced that. Like, we went from, haven't seen him with Cal to now every injury is the worst of all time. So we're really kind of total 2 extremes with this. So we're trying to still figure that part out. But the way the rotation is constructed right now, where you're spread out deep without having, the energy. Pope has talked about this being an energy team, where you're not having anybody individually gas. But what does this look like, assuming you do get Jackson and Lamont back in a timely manner, where you do have, assuming Kerr stays out, because we haven't heard anything positive in regard to him, but if you have 11 scholarship players that you trust, what does that rotation look like, Shawn?
I don't think it means he plays 11 when it comes down to it, but you're really confident in the 8, right? The 6 right now. So let's take the freshman out of this entirely when we're breaking it down. So you got Andrew, Amari, Ortega, Kobe, Almanor, and BG, right? Those are the 6. You add Lamont and Jax to it, there's 8. To me, then it's kind of by a need, right? When it comes to these freshmen, but you're going to see them all when you get in tournament play. That SEC tournament, regardless of where they are, if it's going to be on Wednesday or Thursday, and we'll get into that, where I think there is an advantage to playing on Wednesday that we'll get to. I know people probably don't want to hear that, but when you're talking freshmen, Jack, do you need Travis Perry's ability to knock down shots? Do you need some more rebounding with Trent Noah? Do you need a guy that can maybe get up and do some things defensively for a matchup for a couple of minutes? Where's your foul trouble at on the floor? I think it's 8, but it stretches to 9 every single game, and it's going to be at least one of those freshmen, maybe 2. And I think that's how you kind of operate going into the postseason. But to me, one of the keys, the most impactful thing for this team to have success is they got to make shots from three-point line. You saw it. The game that they don't, they lose in a close one on the road at Texas. The three-point line and the free throw line were the difference for Kentucky and made shots. I know defensively they locked in and did some things, but got to make shots from the perimeter. I think this team needs one when they're healthy. They need one of 2, either Kobe Bray or Jackson Robinson has to shoot the ball well. And if one of them does, they're always going to have a chance to win. If both of them shoot it well, I don't know who beats them when they're at full strength. Go back and look. Florida game, Kobe. Mississippi State, Kobe didn't, but Jackson had a great night. Same thing with Texas A&M. When you look at success for this team, Jack, one of those 2 shoots it well. Right now, with no Jax, if Kobe doesn't knock down shots, it's kind of putting Kentucky in a spot to where it's an uphill climb to win games. But I think 8, the freshman being a 9th, but maybe stretching it to 10. I don't think he'll go 11 deep unless there's foul trouble or something crazy happens. But he's got a ton of confidence right now in his guys. And I think this team has actually gotten better through the adversity of facing some injuries.
I want to talk a little bit about the defensive numbers because they just are absolutely mind-blowing right now, especially given the shorthandedness of this team. But real quick, a message from our friends at Club Blue. Club Blue is the official collective partner of the University of Kentucky. Club Blue was founded by UK fans strictly to support the NIL efforts at the University of Kentucky. Unlike most collectives, 100% of subscriber money, 100% of donor money goes directly to NIL. Club Blue charges no fees. Club Blue subscribers receive some amazing benefits like invitations, special events, meet and greets with UK athletes, signed merchandise, monthly giveaways, ticket giveaways, Club Blue merch, and more. Subscribe today at www.clubbluenil.com. You get to pick which sport you want to support when you sign up. Choose your sport and support with Club Blue. Club Blue is the reason why we're able to, get a roster as talented as this one and have the depth that we are able to talk about the things and dream big the way that we still are because of how deep this roster was constructed under Mark Pope. So if you want to keep this type of momentum moving forward, make sure you join our friends at Club Blue and keep this momentum moving forward. Shawn, a number that just absolutely blew my mind coming out of this game, just kind of where things stand right now, given where things stood just a couple very short weeks ago. So I remember the conversation we had with Nate Oates after that 102-97 game at Rupp Arena, where, no defense played whatsoever. Like just point blank period, just abysmal defensive effort. Just who's going to make the most shots in that one in a back and forth track meet. After the game, a reporter asked Nate, like, hey, you just took a team to the Final Four that was abysmal defensively. There's kind of this, you got to be top 20 in the Ken Palm in both offense and defense if you want to go on a run. You were kind of the anomaly. Like, how do you become an outlier and find out and make a run and go to the program's first Final Four ever? And he kind of just painted the picture of, hey, we were 112 nationally defensive efficiency entering the postseason, but we just kind of said, hey, the regular season is gone. Disappeared forever. We just have to play the best defense of our lives over these next couple of weeks. Over the next month, if we can erase the last 4 months of terrible defense and just push all of our chips in on being an elite defensive team over the next month, we can go win a national championship. And he said that this Kentucky team, they have the personnel to do that they can just push everything in the back burner and focus on the future and make a run with the pieces they have right now, even considering the defensive struggles. So at that time, I want to make sure I have the number right. So at the time of Nate Oates saying that, Kentucky was 89, something like that. They were like 89th or something in the Ken Palm defensive ratings. After the loss in Oxford, they dropped to 112 nationally, which is the exact same spot that Nate Oates in that Alabama team was going into the postseason last season. Since then, the last 4 games, Kentucky has the number 14 defense in college basketball. The only teams that are ranked ahead of Kentucky right now: Dartmouth, Arizona, Clemson, Texas A&M, UNLV, Abilene Christian, St. Mary's, Iowa State, San Diego State, Arkansas, Florida, St. John's, Mississippi State. That's it. That's the list. So for where things stood just 2 weeks ago defensively, down in Oxford, where they gave up 98 points, and it was like 1.42 points per possession. I mean, it was just an absolute turnstile of a defensive effort. I've never seen anything worse with this team. And they turned that around into a top 15 defense in this, yes, small sample size, but a sample size nonetheless, where we're talking 2 weeks, exactly what Nate Oates was talking about. Is kind of the irony of it. He was like, hey, I just hope that they don't, I think they can figure it out. I just hope they don't figure it out by the time they're playing us down in the follow-up game in Tuscaloosa. Here we are, top 15 defense going into that Alabama matchup, the rematch down in Tuscaloosa. So ironic there, but what has been the secret sauce, in your opinion, Shawn, where we can say that they're 68 nationally right now after a 44 spot jump after being 112 just 2 weeks ago?
I mean, some would probably say, or is the schedule kind of catching up in a positive way for them? But then when you pull it apart, Tennessee is currently 30th in offense, Vandy's 31st, and then Texas is 36th. So like, it's not like you're playing teams that are, the opposite of what you are defensively. Like,
and you held South Carolina to its second worst offense. So even as the worst offense in college basketball, they've played better, and they still managed to have the second best, defensive outing against anybody of the season against South Carolina.
And if anything, here you're talking about being able to turn it on at the right time, right? And you're mentioning Nate Oates, and that Alabama team was able to. But with this Kentucky group, we talked about it last year. Break it down into chunks. What are you doing the final couple of weeks of the season? What are your numbers then going into the tournament? Right now, Kentucky's in a good spot. Number 14 over the last 4 games. That gets you to a Final Four if you do it 4 games in a row in the NCAA tournament. And they're outside of South Carolina. I mean, they're beating some teams that are going to be in the NCAA tournament. Now Texas, obviously, they let that one slide, and we don't know what Texas is going to do when it comes to postseason. But just looking at what they're doing here, now this would be where you get in that NCAA tournament. Let's say you play a team, 3 teams that's ranked in the top 35 in adjusted offensive efficiency. Can you beat those teams? Well, now you'd be in the Final Four, and you know what's walking in on Saturday in an Alabama team. That's kind of how it would kind of go in the NCAA tournament more than likely. But I think it's maybe just a commitment to that end of the floor. If the offensive rebounding numbers would be fixed, I think they would be even better. Like that frustrates me, because the possession to close the first half last night, I felt like that was a ball Kentucky could have possessed. And instead it goes right to Vandy and they score. Like, those things can't happen against really good teams. Like, that was the only thing that kept Vandy, to me, from getting beat by 35 last night.
And it's the only thing that got you beat in Austin. Like,
it's the only thing.
You win that battle, or at least like you don't. It's just, hey, don't give up 15. Like, give up 8. Can you just be okay at it? Just don't be horrendous. And you're now talking about a 4-game winning streak while you're without your second and third leading scorers.
They've still avoided that dreaded 3-game losing streak.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
somehow, man.
That, I'm telling you, man, that when this thing comes down to the end here, and I think they're going to avoid it, but when it comes down to the end, not having that 3-game skid in here is going to be one of the biggest reasons to why they've been able to kind of tread a little bit, but also find success in the league that has actually helped them with seeding wise. Because it's not easy to avoid a 3-game losing streak. Look, Alabama's trying to avoid it. Like, everybody besides Auburn is kind of in Florida have been in that position this year where you're like, oh boy, is it about to be us that goes on the 3-game losing skid in this league? But to me, I think that it's more of a commitment to what Mark Pope and the staff are doing. They're obviously emphasizing the defensive end of the floor. Amari Williams is the most impactful guy on this team for me. And they've had guys out, but Amari's the guy for me that if he was out, that I just don't know if Kentucky could I don't know if they could win without Amari for a full 40. Just because he is their physical presence. He is their best rebounder. And I think that he adds something that some other guys don't. And how they're able to kind of plug and play in the backcourt right now, I would have the confidence meter would be lower if Amari wasn't in the game for Kentucky. Like, he was able to impact the game at the rim last night in the second half and do some things that I thought Kentucky had a lot of success. Gave up 21 points in the second half.
Yeah.
And early on, I thought this thing was going to be a final score of like 90-87. And then it settles in. So I think Kentucky's commitment to that end of the floor. Look, when you know where you're bad, you kind of have no choice but maybe to flip your practices and start emphasizing that end of the floor more.
And they totally flipped the defensive, the rebounding numbers as well. They were, went into halftime down 18-12 and then flipped it to 18-12 the other way and made it a 30 even split to close things out.
When you force missed shots and then you don't miss any free throws, right? Like, you go 13-13 at the line, there's opportunities that are more than likely, defensive rebounds for teams if you're missing free throws as well. So they shot the ball well from all areas of the floor, and you flip the rebounding. The turnovers, they're still not turning teams over a lot, but as long as this team doesn't turn it over 16, 17 times a game themselves, I'm not as much worried about that. They just got to keep scoring the basketball. You got to keep knocking down shots. And it's the thing that I think gives me hope about this. I talked about Kobe and Jackson a moment ago, and we're still waiting on Jackson to see when he's available, but it's a by committee thing. It's a balanced 3-point attack for this team too. When you look at it last night, Kobe knocks down 3, Almanor knocks down 3. You got Chandler knocks one in, Perry knocks in a couple. Like, the balance is there for this team, even at the 3-point line. But then you just have Amari just going out and doing things now, Jack, that, like, is there a guy that has kind of just emerged more in the SEC that early on we were kind of – a lot of people get frustrated watching him with the ball, but then he goes out and has a triple-double, and you see the passing ability, you see the things that he can do. He, to me, has just turned into a guy that he can win you games in the SEC tournament. He can win you games in the NCAA tournament. I don't know if we're ever going to see him play 30 minutes, like endurance and stamina wise. I mean, we questioned that when he got here, and now we're seeing the same thing happening here. But he plays so hard, and he's also 262 pounds, like 7 foot tall. Like, that's a lot of weight.
You get out there at 7 foot, 262 pounds, and you haul ass the way he does.
Yeah, you run your ass up and down the floor. You'll be asking for a break too. Heck, if I ran 2 minutes right now, I'd be passed out. I'd be through another table.
Please, for the love of God.
And that's where getting Carr back, BG just has to stay locked in here. And look, you're going to have down games, right? Like, you're going to have some games where you're playing out of your mind. You're going to have games where you're not. But that's where having Carr available, healthy, contributes. Like, all the boxes are beginning to be checked. Carr's back. Amari has kind of became that guy without Lamont. You hopefully get your guy in Lamont back, Jackson back. Kobe makes shots. Almanor is probably the penciled in guy into a role better than anybody. And it's kind of naturally happened throughout the season. And now your freshmen are making plays and contributing to winning. And that was kind of the missing ingredient for this team for 3 months was They didn't play freshmen when they won some of those games early in the year. Now they're having to lean on all three of them. The development of this team from where it was to where it is now, but yet the blending of winning and beating good teams, it's pretty impressive, Jack, when you talk about this. That's why Mark Pope is my coach of the year, given what he's had to deal with injury-wise and the different faces that have won games for them.
Before we totally move on from Amari Williams, there was a stat that was just hilariously dumb to me, but I thought it was very funny, and just like goes to show how dominant he has truly been this year, especially in this recent stretch. He is the first Division I or NBA player. Like, I didn't even know they tracked those two stats together, to have a game with 15 plus points, 4 plus blocks, 100% shooting overall, 100% at the line, and 0 fouls since Pau Gasol did it for the Los Angeles Lakers in 2010. Like, what a dumb, ridiculous stat that, like, I don't know why we've even tracked that, but
that was a title Lakers team too.
We don't talk about that year.
Well, I do.
We don't talk about that year. That game
Who they beat that year?
I don't remember. I think that game 7 is just washed away.
You want to throw me through a table right now?
More splinters on your head than you already have right now. But yeah, I mean, shout out Amari Williams. So just for a guy that got as much criticism as he did, and again, I think the criticism that he got early was justified with his play right now, because we've seen he's capable of this. Like, when you're 7 foot, 262 pounds, and as skilled and as athletic and as physical as he is, there's no excuse for him to not, especially in the cupcake game. Like, early on, it was when he would go for, these mediocre nights against the lower end non-conference opponents. Like, there's no reason why he didn't, he's the numbers at per 40 numbers where it's put him side by side next to Oscar Tshiebwe. The reason why, like, we saw that type of potential in him from day one, and like, it came across as whiny, and it came across as, oh, you guys just I've just expectations are way too high. I understood some of the gripes were dumb, but I think they were all good natured because they saw the all SEC big that Amari would. Like, if Janai Broome didn't exist, Sean, that's your first team all SEC big, and maybe even your SEC player of the year. Like that. I mean, he's
going to get his chance though to go up against him.
He's been that impactful, and like I want the nuanced conversation of Amari Williams and the underwhelming leading to the criticism early, and the performing up to expectation, and the the praise that he's getting right now. Those two things go hand in hand. I think both sides were correct in how they went about it, but all that matters is Amari Williams is playing the way he needs to when they need him most, with the roster as thin as it is right now, and the injury issues and things like that. He's stepping up to the plate, and that's a pretty massive thing. Like, do you think he has locked down an all SEC spot? Like, I think they give like 100 all SEC bids now, so it'd be shocked if he didn't. But I feel like he's deserving a first team.
Yeah, he has. I think that he's put himself in position to get that. And look, you mentioned early in the season the frustration. Let's face it. When your guy's not being your guy, it's pretty obvious. And I think it was clear that they needed him to be the guy. And he has emerged into that guy for Kentucky, like with his physicality. I want to see them continue just to post him more. Like the way that he works for position and gets position, and he plays so hard. Like, I'll lean into what I said about 10 minutes ago. When we're talking about the best version of Kentucky, none of these freshmen were making plays. Amari Williams was nowhere near the player that he is right now when Kentucky was beating Duke in those teams in Florida and stuff early in the SEC schedule. This version of him, and you get these other guys back, Jack, like Kentucky's biggest opponent right now is health. If it can get healthy and beat that, that's the biggest quad one win they can get, is just to beat health and be healthy going into postseason. And that's where I was mentioning a moment ago that getting that, if let's say that you end up playing on Wednesday, I feel like the committee needs to see this team at full strength to then understand really how to evaluate Kentucky's overall body of work this season, because it's hard to remember what they looked like when they beat Duke. Yeah, you can turn on the tape, but we all know we live in the moment. And if you get Wednesday, Thursday, and let's say you get to Friday and you play Auburn in like a 9-1 game or something like that, man, that's obviously Nashville's dream if that were to work out for the tournament. But I think if you can't get it full strength regular season, I just feel like as many games as possible to kind of work your rhythm together. That's where I saw the benefit of playing on Wednesday. And I want to win the league tournament, but I also want to put myself in position to win the one that matters too the most. But hey, if you can get healthy, man, I'm telling you, this team it didn't get the one at Texas, but it showed me in 36 minutes. I'm like, man, this would be a heck of a win the way that they've had to kind of gut through it. But the bounce back said more to me than what happened on Saturday, that they were able to bounce back and play the way they did in the second half last night. Like this team is going to have a chance if it's healthy.
Yeah, I totally agree. We're transitioning into SEC tournament talk and just kind of where the standings are right now. So obviously with 5 regular season games to go and postseason right in front of us, the best time of the year is here, and the best app to bet college basketball is Circus Sports Kentucky. It's sports betting the way it should be, with high and transparent betting limits, the lowest holds, and exceptional customer service. It doesn't matter when they take the court, whether it's spreads, props, futures, or in-game. Circus Sports is the place to bet college basketball, fund, and bet like a pro from anywhere, anytime. Download your new bookie today at circusports.com. Must be 18 or older for Kentucky probably gambling services. Call or text 1-800-426-2537. Talking a little bit with Circus Sports, planning on having some really unique, cool things going into March Madness, going into conference tournament schedule play, so be prepared for a lot of that. We're going to roll one out. One of our sources say parlays here on Saturday. So Sean, keep your eyes and ears peeled. Make sure you get those ideas ready to roll as we prepare for that trip down to Tuscaloosa. Steven and I will be heading down there, so we'll have plenty of time to put together our thinking caps a little bit and make sure that we're good to go. With 5 regular season games to go, Sean, SEC tournament begins, and as things stand today on February 20th, Kentucky is currently the number 8 seed, but with that Mississippi State head-to-head, we're projected currently is finishing number 9 with a 9-9 finish in the SEC. That would put us, very unfortunately, with a Wednesday start time, 1 p.m. Sean, you talked a little bit about there are some benefits to a Wednesday start, but to have the first game on the very first day, probably not what Kentucky fans necessarily hoped. Although if there is kind of a devil's advocate to it, and a counter of, hey, we've had that event taken away from us for the last several years, where we've gotten kind of one and dones, and in Nashville we haven't been able to enjoy the event that has been kind of the Kentucky Invitational over the years. So why not spread it across Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and just kind of take the city over for an extended period, extended vacation. But from just where things stand today, what is the benefit of a potential Wednesday start, and what would Kentucky have to do to avoid that, if you would rather the Thursday start? I think most people would in general rather a Thursday start. You're just kind of where things stand, where your head is right now as we kind of enter the home stretch.
Yeah, leaving that graphic up, I want the Thursday start, but I'm going to find the positives in the Wednesday start as well, like if that's what it comes down to for Kentucky. But when you're looking at this thing, Jack, like you got a top 25 team that's going to have to play on Wednesday night in the league tournament. Like, wow. Like that's wild when you kind of, pull it apart there. But I think just obviously going on the road to Alabama shorthanded is going to be tough. We know what Auburn presents, but you got to find a way to beat Oklahoma right next week in a midweek game. I think that's their last late tip of the regular season, and then beat LSU, and then can you find a way to win 3 down the stretch here to close, and maybe Do you sneak in as a 7? Do you get there as it 8? Like, I don't know. Like, obviously you've beaten Tennessee twice, so you know that you've got that on them. You've got the win against Mississippi State. But if it's Thursday, I think Thursday gives you more confidence that they can go on a run and win the league tournament. I don't know if anybody's going to be able to go Wednesday to Sunday in this league. I think the toll that takes on you, and I know probably a lot of conversation about, do you want guys that have been out for a while playing 4 days in a row? I say yes, just because I want to work into rhythm and not rest guys in those situations. But to me, like, I think this team could go on a run and get the Saturday, Sunday if it plays on Thursday. Starting on Wednesday is tough, but I think it gives you an opportunity to kind of work yourself in rhythm more. And I don't know at this point what's more important. I need to see how many guys are available over the coming weeks. But right now, obviously, you play to win, and if you can get an 8, a 7, maybe even a 6, I mean, you keep pushing and pressing to get to a point. But can you imagine if Kentucky Auburn were to meet in Nashville? I'm telling you, that's Nashville's dream, man. Is one of those two teams playing there, or Tennessee? Like, you don't know what it's going to be, but there's a path to 12, 13 quad 1 wins here before you enter the NCAA tournament, given what they have regular season and what awaits in Nashville.
So when you're thinking of, like, hey, how do you avoid a Wednesday start? It's complicated. The path, the simplest, easiest way to put it is you just win the games in front of you. If Kentucky happens to, win out or go 4-1 in the stretch, or, even if they were to go, 3-2 in this stretch, lose to Alabama in Auburn, there's still a path, but it's just complicated because Mississippi State is playing really, really well. They got back-to-back wins over Ole Miss and Texas A&M. Kentucky holds the tiebreaker, but they go to Norman to play Oklahoma, at Alabama, LSU at home, Texas at home, and then at Arkansas. So their schedule slightly more favorable than Kentucky. Ole Miss, which is projected to finish eighth potentially in front of Kentucky. We're just looking at the KenPom numbers. They have at Vanderbilt, at number 1 Auburn, Oklahoma at home, Tennessee at home, and then at Florida. But they have the head-to-head. So there's a lot of the head-to-head, and kind of when we're in this, this middle chunk where there's all these teams are kind of just eating each other alive. They don't really have the favorable head-to-heads that you're kind of missing with Texas. Texas is kind of a similar in a similar boat as well. So it's complicated. The easiest way to do it is by winning these games in front of you, but you are going to need some luck. Like, they're going to need some of these teams to crumble down the stretch. And the way this, if you're looking for a reason to be optimistic, the way this league is built, somebody is bound to collapse. You're just hoping it's not your team first and foremost, but you're hoping that just, one team catches a bad pod week in the last week of the regular season and they drop a couple spots. So a start on Thursday isn't impossible. It's still very possible, but you're now looking at a reality of a Wednesday start more and more by the day. Last night helped to avoid that. If you lost last night, it's almost a certain guarantee that you were going to start on Wednesday, but like, it's at least on our radar now, Shawn, whereas, I think most fans just kind of hope that this was the worst case, wanted to avoid a worst case scenario with Wednesday, but it's just kind of the nature of the beast with how this league is and why it's so important to win some of those toss-up games.
Yeah, Stephen, if you can put those standings back up there for a moment as well. So, Ole Miss is obviously right there ahead of you. Tennessee, right there a game off as well, Jack, but those two teams play each other. Ole Miss, you're talking about one of these teams that could fall off and lose some games. Just looking at their schedule, they're on the road at Vandy, on the road at Auburn. They still host Tennessee, and then they close at Florida. So there's some games there that can you move up, a spot. Is that the spot that you claim? Catching Missouri will be tough, even though you do have that head-to-head game there to close the season. I've not looked at what Missouri has left. I can probably pull
Arkansas,
it up
at Arkansas, home against South Carolina, at Vandy, at Oklahoma versus Kentucky. I mean, that is as They went through the meat grinder and survived, and now they get the reward to show for it.
And Tennessee has at A&M, at LSU, home versus Bama, at Ole Miss, home versus South Carolina. Like, you could see Tennessee losing.
That might be that might be interesting.
And so to me, if you just win, let's say you go 3-2, if you could steal one somewhere, you're going to get some help there with Tennessee, Ole Miss, right? Because you're so close. Like, one of those teams is going definitely suffering a loss.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you don't play either of them to close, but I think you could at least get one of those spots. Getting both is tough because there's also a built-in win for both of those there at some point ahead of you. But look, you got to win Saturday before you really put some stuff into kind of in front of you. But look, like I said, I can't get caught up in who it's going to be on Wednesday or if they're playing Thursday, because I've said that, the biggest opponents, their health right now. If they're healthy and at full strength, Jack, I think that they can beat anybody in college basketball.
And Shawn, think about where we were that last Saturday in Knoxville last year, and watching the fight. I mean, that leading up to the Tennessee game, watching the games from Thompson Bowling that were the other games going on in the SEC that would decide when, whether Kentucky was going to start, get the double bye on Friday. Like, the seed jumps were 2-6. Like, it was insane how just things were moving and shaking all the way up until the very last possible day right before SEC tournament week. So it does get a little dumb, and we have to do it because it's a podcast and it's life, and we're playing in the SEC. That's what you do. But there is something to be said about this team and how they have had the approach of every game is the biggest game of their lives, and just kind of taking it one step at a time, where the one thing you can do is control your destiny right now. If Kentucky were to win out right now, they have at minimum a Thursday start. Like, you do kind of have to look at it from a control your own destiny standpoint in this league, because there is so much shaking and moving where it could come down to that last Saturday, and you could see guys jump from 7th to 3rd, or drop from 2nd down to 6th. Like, that's what happens in this league, and you can't take any game for granted. You can't, that's why Vanderbilt on Wednesday was a must win. They took care of business. Now we look ahead to Alabama. This was the one that the analytics will tell you it's not going to be pretty for the Cats. Find a way to win this one, and then you're kind of back in that positive standing of, okay, now you're playing with house money with looking at a Thursday start. But then you can't overlook that and then slip up against an LSU, or then you can't follow that up with a loss in Norman. Like, there's so much that you just kind of have to take it one day at a time, one game at a time, and just let things play out the way they need to with the rest of the league, and just hope that you get a favorable standing. And it's not a worst case thing in the world if you are the 9 starting on Wednesday, as you described. There are benefits, but I don't think anybody in BBN wants to hear that possibility. I think everybody wants to get a Thursday start, have fun Wednesday, and see how things roll out the rest of the weekend.
I think so too. And one more time, Steven, if you can just throw that up there, just trying to use that as kind of some talking points. But look at it, Jack. You've got the number 4, 7, and 6 teams in the country right now are probably going to finish this league with at least 2 of them already have 4 to 5 losses, but Alabama probably going to get another one there at some point. Hopefully Saturday. But that's crazy to me that, like, it's just the depth of this league and how good it's been. Tennessee, number 6 in the country, and 5 league losses, and you look around, and in past years, a team that's number 6 in the country in the SECs probably has more of a record like Auburn has at the top half of this thing. And then look at the teams that are going to get to 20 wins overall. You're already got 6. Ole Miss, Kentucky, Mississippi State's getting there. Vandy, all these teams are going to be right there pushing 20 wins. Like, the depth of this league is just incredible. And in Missouri, the way that their schedule sets up, You know, you've got Alabama, Auburn coming up, but you're probably going to be facing a team that's ranked maybe top 7, top 8 in college basketball by the time you close the regular season. Like, that's another massive trip away from home for Kentucky. Like, it doesn't get any easier. So, you know, getting on a neutral floor in Nashville where you're actually the home team, Kentucky will be the home team every single time they take the floor in Nashville. That'll be the one plus when you do get there.
Yeah, absolutely. Real quick, message from our friends at Monticello Bank. Enjoy the home court advantage with Monticello Bank's HELOC special and use the equity you've built in your home to finance special home projects and improvements. Score big with a fantastic introductory rate and attractive closing costs with 20 locations in 14 counties across Kentucky. We're just around the corner, so hurry in and speak with one of our mortgage lenders about this limited time offer today. Find us on the web at mbcbank.com. Monticello Bank, where people matter. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. Shawn, we're talking about this Alabama matchup and just how important it is for the Cats. And, you know, you're not playing with house money, but like it is one where, you know, kind of similar to that Tennessee game in Knoxville where people just don't expect you to go down there and win that one. And you do kind of just have this, like, we got backs against the wall. People don't believe in you. Why not? Just kind of that why not mentality. What are your keys to this game, and how much of it, you know, talking to Andrew Carr last night, like he said that this is one that he's had kind of circled on his calendar after knowing he got punked a little bit, but punk's not the right word because, you know, how much of that was the injury limitation going, you know, with the heads up battle against Grant Nelson, but he got, you know, it was a straight up head-to-head battle that he got pretty severely cooked on. Where that was kind of the game that he realized that his back was not where it needed to be. Said that was the one where he kind of realized he needed to shut things down for a little bit and get it right so we could kind of see the best version of him again this season. So how important is it for Andrew Carr to be back to full strength in this matchup, getting another shot at Grant Nelson? And just kind of like what is the vibe going into this trip to Tuscaloosa? Why should a Kentucky fan feel potentially good or I guess potentially bad about the head-to-head battle?
I think Kentucky's playing with confidence right now, even though that they, you know, they lost the one at Texas over the weekend. I think that they're gaining confidence in themselves. I think they're, you know, seeing Andrew Carr back in the starting lineup last night. We've talked about how big that was because, you know, that's the way in the direction Mark Pope wants to go. Amari Williams, the way he's playing. And do you have a chip on your shoulder going down there, right? Where you gave up 102 last time. I think the key is to not give up 100 this time. If you can keep that thing in the 80s, then I think you've got a shot on the road. But it's all tied to Kentucky making shots. You're going to get Alabama's best effort. Losing 2 in a row, returning to their building. And look, I mean, they just gave up 110 in regulation.
Phew.
110. In regulation. But you're going to get their best shot because guess what follows for Alabama? Like, this thing's not a cakewalk for them to close. Yep. At home versus Mississippi State, at Tennessee, home versus Florida, at Auburn. You're probably getting a desperate version of the Crimson Tide who's ranked in the top 10 in the country and one of the better teams in college basketball. You're going to get some desperation mode from them.
Ken Palm projects 3 losses in that of those 5.
Yeah. And Kentucky's not one of them, I'm sure.
Yeah, they have a 70% chance to beat Kentucky in Ken Palm's eyes.
And here you are, if you're Mark Pope and you're kind of gathering your guys here this week, and it's in you know, Alabama's on the same path here, both playing Wednesday night. That one's not getting the advantage of an off day here, so you're going straight into Alabama prep today and moving towards that, and then obviously travel tomorrow. You got to go in there and you kind of circle everybody together here, Jack, and you kind of say, look, we're shorthanded, but guys, you can win this game. And talk about a confidence boost. If Kentucky's going to compete, I don't see this being a game, even where you're playing a desperate Alabama team trying to avoid a 3-game losing streak, getting just blown out. Because I think Kentucky's to a point. I don't expect another Ole Miss type effort. I think that this team understands that it's getting down to the nitty-gritty here of what this thing is going to be and how big would a win be. But I think Kentucky will put itself in position to win. I'm not confident enough to sit here and say they're going to, but I think that they're going to play well enough to at least have us engaged, and then it comes down to can you execute. But that schedule right there, I didn't look at it until just now, but you talk about brutal to close. Like Kentucky's got obviously, I mean, Alabama, Auburn, Missouri's not easy. Alabama might have the toughest road to close the regular season.
I mean, when you say the easiest matchup is a Mississippi State team that's as tough of an out, I mean, they're top 30 in the Ken Pom. I mean, like that's a tough out with.
Yeah.
Like,
I guess the other thing that we should be looking at, we've talked a lot about teams losing 3 in a row this year in the league and then teams losing 2. The only teams that I know of that haven't lost back-to-back games, Auburn obviously, Florida hasn't, Tennessee has once. Beyond that, though, is there anybody that hasn't else that's lost 2 in a row at some point in the league? I mean, that's something we're probably going to have to sit here and look at for a few minutes. But Arkansas has, Georgia has, LSU, Vandy. Is Ole Miss? I think so.
Right now, yeah, they lost Mississippi State, Texas A&M, Missouri, but they haven't outside of that stretch.
It would have to be those teams that are near the top.
Mm-hmm.
If any of those have it. I know Tennessee did when Kentucky beat them. So yeah, Missouri has, Tennessee and A&M back to back. So like, it's gotten everybody at some point, besides Florida and Auburn there at the top. That's incredible, right? Like that just shows you how
I'm looking. I'm going through every team in the schedule, and I think that's it. Yeah, I don't know.
And you beat one of those.
Texas A&M was the closest. They started with 2, Alabama and Kentucky, and they've really held off outside of that.
That right there shows that's what shows you just how tough this thing actually is. And then when you pull it apart and look at the teams that are going to be in the NCAA tournament that have actually lost 3 in a row, I mean, it's crazy. Like this league it's been fun to watch, but that's why I've said since January 5th or 6th, you just can't get caught up in it. Like have you been on a part of a season to where you actually know your team is good enough to win and compete, but you also wake up on mornings where you're like, I don't know if we're any good at all. and then like, I mean, last year I never felt that way because I just felt they were so bad defensively it was going to get them at some point.
Yeah.
This team, I'm in like, man, they've passed the eye test a lot, but then they've also made me want to close my eyes a lot. So it's been fun. And I think it's going to be even more exciting as we close the stretch here.
Yeah, I totally agree. What also is fun is our friends at Roback Activewear. There's only one way to describe Roback. Best fit, best feel for those who aren't familiar with Roback. They're completely changing the game with their incredibly comfortable activewear. Roback has released so many items within their new licensed game day collection. One coming up with Kentucky here and to kind of kick-start the March Madness season, so I cannot wait for that. But nobody else in the market is pairing these high level of custom designs with this quality of active wear. Their everyday shorts, Delta Performance pants are the perfect pairing as well. They're both comfortable with an elastic waistband, great fabric, and is made to have an appearance of a nice short look, but the comfort for a day on the move. Roback has been proudly leading the NIL charge, having signed partnerships with multiple college football stars, past and present, and becoming the go-to brand for college athletes across the country. Use code KSR on roback.com for a generous 20% off for all new customers through the end of this week. That's spelled Roback, RHOBACK.com. That's 20% off all performance polos, shorts, and more with code KSR. I'm very excited for that very exclusive Kentucky collection that's coming out here to begin the month of March. But that's a lot. It's going to be a lot of fun. I cannot wait to show off the cool stuff that we're getting from Roback, and you should as well. I'm excited. I feel good after celebrating this win, and we know that we can't get too high, too low with this SEC schedule. But Kentucky's in a good spot. They're in a really good spot. That we'll see if they can take care of business. We'll see what the injury status looks like. What's your gut on when you see both Lamont and or Jackson back? Because they're obviously 2 different timelines. But give me your hunch. Give me your educated guess.
I'm going to say Lamont we see first. I'm looking at Auburn maybe Oklahoma.
Ooh, Oklahoma, that's an interesting one. Yeah.
And it helps because it's a Wednesday, right? You get the extra day. So throwing him into the mix versus Auburn's tough, but if you can throw him in there against Oklahoma and maybe do you think that this is going to be a gradual progression thing for Lamont, or it's going to be he's in there and he's playing 27, 28 minutes right out of the gate? Because he was right in the starting lineup when he came back the last time. I don't know what's the correct way to manage that. Jackson, to me, is maybe more after that Auburn game. I don't know.
Do you think that Jackson, do you put him in, I mean, with Auburn as, they're a juggernaut. They're as physical and tough and skilled as you'll find in the SEC. Is that the game to throw him back out there and potentially re-aggravate it, knowing that, like,
it's probably LSU?
Yeah, I think we see, and I don't know if you saw in the shoot around video yesterday, Lamont was back, and we saw we heard from Mark Pope that he had returned to non-contact stuff, and they're just kind of trying to figure out how to throw him back in with the contact stuff. That's the exact same timeline for how we saw him before he re-aggravated his shoulder, and he jumped right back in, played starter level minutes, and played very well, all things considered. So I think we're going to see him. This is just an educated guess. This is not any, scoop or anything, but I wouldn't totally rule out an Alabama return, while also I kind of have Oklahoma as my mentally preparing him to play. Just kind of, listening to how Pope talks, how we have seen him as Lamont has gotten close to a return, kind of similar verbiage there with Pope. So I just feel like we're really close on Lamont. And then Jackson, the fact that he still hasn't done anything. Pope, when he talks about him, he says that he, has his wrist is basically on, Saturn right now. There's no idea where that goes. But I also don't think that Pope would be joking about, hey, he's in practice taking left-handed shots. He's actually pretty good left-handed. Didn't think if he was seriously doubting his return and a timetable for return this season, I don't think Pope would be as I think he would be a little bit more grim with his kind of just prognosis and how he talked about Jackson. So I'm guessing we see Lamont within the next week plus, and I think after that it'll be Jackson. A week ish after that, and we'll see. As long as they're both back for postseason, I don't care. We're finding ways to win without them, and that's all that matters, Sean.
It is all that matters. Like I said, get the full strength and keep building confidence with the guys that you got and win. Just win, baby. It's simple, right? Just keep winning games.
Well, we be heading down to Tuscaloosa. I think we're going to go day of, Steven, I think. So I think we're going to head down early Saturday morning. We're going to soak in Titletown and hopefully send those Tide fans very, very sad. So that's the plan here. Thanks for everybody tuning in. Thanks to all of our sponsors. Make sure you go subscribe to KSR Plus. Make sure you're subscribed right here. If you're not subscribed while you're watching this, hey, that's not very nice. So Sean, where can fans find your work as we wrap this thing up?
Right there at _Coach S. Smith.
I noticed I did this in the live video that we did, the pregame for Texas, and when I point this way, it was actually this way. So I don't know if it's like a reverse thing once the show airs, how it goes. But whatever it is, below me should stay the same. At Jack Pilgrim KSR. We will see you on the other side of hopefully a very impressive upset win down in Tuscaloosa. We'll see you then.